Welcome back. This video will introduce the first lab lesson that you'll be doing on electromyography. So this is an illustration of some students from one of my previous labs attaching the electrodes that need to be attached, and well, the electrodes were attached, and then the leads, clipping the leads onto the electrodes. So again, just to kind of go back to the theory, the muscles are, when you contract your muscle, they give out an electrical signal. So we're going to be measuring that electrical signal. But again, as I mentioned in the introduction, we are not sticking a probe into the muscles. So this is a non-invasive. If this was an invasive measure, we would be sticking a probe deep into the muscles and then measuring that electrical activity. That would probably be more accurate, but you wouldn't get as many willing participants. So we're going to be measuring these just on the surface of the skin. These electrodes are designed to pick up the electrical signal coming from within the body, but it's again measuring it on the surface of the skin. So the strength of this EMG signal that we'll be receiving is determined by a few things. One is how close the muscle is to the skin. So muscles that are deeper below is probably going to give you a less accurate signal than one really close to the surface of the skin where the electrode is. And then the amount of interfering tissue. So if there is a muscle deep in there, but there's a very heavy layer of fat tissue between the muscle and the skin, it's not going to be as clear of a signal as if the muscle is just right there on the surface of the skin. And then the proximity of the electrode to what you're measuring. So this kind of goes to, starting with this lab today, you're going to want to be sure that your electrode placement is really right there along the muscle, as the lab report will indicate the kind of the lab directions. But you're going to want to be as close as possible to the actual muscle you're measuring. Sometimes people aren't quite aware of those anatomical kind of landmarks as to where the muscles are. They might misplace an electrode and they'll get a fuzzy signal. So the arrangement of the electrodes is a bipolar arrangement. So there's two active and one inactive electrode. And then both of the active electrodes are over the muscle of interest that you're trying to measure. And then that inactive electrode is like a ground, and it can be thought of as it absorbing an unlimited amount of current without changing its potential. So that third, you're always going to have, for most of these labs, you'll have one ground and then two active leads that you'll be measuring. Okay, this is a layout a little bit, but you'll get plenty more detail from the lab procedural documents as well. But this is a layout of how the electrodes will be placed for this particular lab. Another placement tip is to not place the electrodes too close to a pulsating artery, because the cardiac signal is the strongest in the body. So if you're trying to measure muscle tissue and you're too close to some cardiac element here, you're just going to get that signal is louder, and it's going to kind of drown out the muscle. So the goals of this lab are to record the skeletal muscle in tonus. So we're going to start with tonus, that sort of resting state that isn't 100% resting. And then you're going to record the maximum strength of clenching that you can do in each of your hands. And then you'll observe, record, and correlate the motor unit recruitment with the muscle contractions. So the lab report is trying to help you in your mind tie together this theory of motor unit recruitment with what you're actually doing, and you can actually literally feel it and then see the resulting graph. And then you'll complete the lab report. What I'm going to do is provide kind of a pre-developed Excel file that you will fill in. So you're going to need to find the Excel file that is waiting for you for each of these labs and use that to fill in the data. And you'll be submitting the Excel file to submit your lab report each time.